Hi, and welcome to Give Me the Bible, where God's Word speaks for itself. We've been talking about matters of interpretation and methods of interpretation in terms of trying to understand what the Bible is communicating to us. And we talked about understanding the historical context. And what I want to talk about now is the importance of understanding that the Bible is essentially a piece of literature. And this is literature that is made up of many different types of genres or kinds of literature, like, for instance, history. Okay, for instance, you might pick up the book of Joshua and start reading something that, well, it sounds like a historical narrative giving us details of specific events in history. Or you might look at the wisdom literature, like Proverbs or Job, and you notice that the genre is a little bit different. It doesn't read quite the same as historical narrative. Also, you might pick up something like the apocalyptic literature found at the end of the book of Daniel, or perhaps Zechariah, or even the famous book of Revelation, the last book of the Bible. And you notice that those books are different from historical narratives and from wisdom literature as well. And here's why it's absolutely crucial to understand that there are different genres in the Bible. It's because genre fundamentally affects how we interpret what we're reading. Let me give you a practical example. It may seem kind of silly, but if we were reading a fiction novel and we read about a dragon, or maybe a whole family of dragons that came and attacked the city of Orlando, well, we might find that pretty entertaining, and we just kind of sit back and relax and enjoy the ride that fictional novel was trying to take us on. But what if we read that in the Orlando Sentinel? What if we read that in the newspaper, that there was a family of dragons that attacked Orlando? Well, what we would probably do is freak out, and we'd turn on the news and we'd see what's going on. Or if we were maybe near Orlando, we might pack up our bags and leave, because we wouldn't want to be attacked by the dragons next. So you see, really, it's the same account. The difference is, depending on the genre that we're reading, that has a direct effect on how we interpret and how we take action based on that text. It's the same thing with the Bible. I mean, if you're reading the Psalms, for instance, well, a lot of that is poetry, and so maybe you'll read something like Psalm 98, Psalm chapter 98, and it makes a statement like, verse 7, "Let the sea roar and all it contains, the world and those who dwell in it. Let the rivers clap their hands, and let the mountains sing together for joy before the Lord, for he is coming to judge the earth, and he will judge the world with righteousness and the people with equity." Now, again, we might, maybe if that was a historical narrative and we read in a history account that there were mountains that were singing and rivers were actually clapping their hands, well, we might be a little weirded out by that, because we think, well, that's not really, that doesn't even really make any sense, honestly. But when you read that in poetic writing, oh, it makes perfect sense, because he's using imagery, he's using words to paint pictures, to talk specifically about how the whole world is praising God and clapping their hands and shouting joyfully to him, even things that are what we'd consider inanimate objects. And let's say if we're reading the book of Revelation, for instance, and we're reading about things like, frog demons, and I think it's Revelation chapter 9 that talks about that, in this bottomless pit, and there's all kinds of just really odd imagery. If we don't understand that that's a type of genre, that's a type of writing that was very common in that day, to paint a very, very visual, vivid picture of God's activity in the world, we might be a little freaked out about that, and we might actually start making wrong applications and say, oh, well, maybe those frog demons are talking about something that's going to happen in 2,000 years, and maybe that's maybe those are the Republicans, or maybe those are the Democrats that God's talking about and he's warning us about. Well, listen, that's not at all what the intention of that was. It was written to specific people for a specific purpose. So I just want to say we've just got to keep genre in mind when interpreting the Bible. Otherwise, we're just going to be thrown totally off track from what the writers intended us to understand. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this is encouraging to you, and Lord willing, I'll see you next time.